Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. The 11th Thursday. OPEC trims forecast for 2021 rebound in oil demand, says Winston. Yes, that's true. But we got like the jobs report, and we had a lot of interesting action yesterday that we should analyze. So, to the charts here. Looking at the E-mini, so Tesla kind of took a bit of a plunge and drugged the larger indexes down with it. And then they kind of leveled off. So again, when we look at this was, large meta order, short-term regime change after the meta order ends, which means this pullback, kind of doesn't mean anything. Now, overnight, relatively quiet. China is kind of like in the lunar holiday, so, there's not a whole lot going on there, but they have, as is common, they have slightly risen. And you can see here when they fell, man, the NASDAQ and the Russell really got slaughtered. Much more than the S&P and the Dow. So coming over to the Treasuries taking a pretty strong hop up, and then overnight a little bit of pressure on the upside. We'll see where that one goes. I think that it will largely have to do with the dollar. Also, we got supply numbers coming in today. That's going to be really, really important there. Here with Winston saying, OPEC raises their oil forecast, but they're not really moving today yet. So we shall see. Gold had a little bit of a pullback yesterday. But in the overnight session, gold and silver looking pretty okay. And copper, as always, looking pretty good on the upward trend. The dollar getting pushed down again. So, the dollar didn't really move during all of the chaos yesterday. And so now here today, the dollar's getting pushed down once again. And when we come over here and we look at the Bitcoins, a Bitcoin just pushing up now. It's like another pump. Pretty planned. And you come back over here, well, MSTR is up 18%, and Tesla is up, up 8%. So we got interesting stuff. The kind of, we were speculating if maybe Tesla was down as big as they were yesterday because of Bitcoin. I certainly think it's a possibility. It's not necessarily, proven, and there could be a lot of alternative explanations. So one thing that I learned yesterday was that Elon Musk's brother sold. So that's one thing. Another thing is that the big short guy, what is his name? Michael something such and such, is bearish Tesla. And he claims that the whole Tesla buying Bitcoin thing is just bluster to distract everybody from the fact that they're not looking so good and that earnings are eventually going to drag them down. So also GameStop tried a little bit of a pump yesterday and it immediately dumped. Look at that. It's up 10% and then right back down. Again, here on this one, it appears to me that the shorts are out, but that a lot of retail traders are being deceived and don't really understand the numbers and so forth. So they're still in, but I expect that eventually this stock is going to fall apart. Hopefully I should have a video. It's going to be hard. I want to make a video about it, but I'm babysitting this weekend, so I don't know when I can do it, but I think I want to have a video about it on Monday or Sunday. Sunday would be good. Good morning, Anthony. Hey, thank you for the donation. Yeah, it is a new all-time high. All I can say about Bitcoin at this point is that it is in an unprecedented bubble. And this time, the bubble is not driven by a retail frenzy. So we've never seen this degree of speculation above its value. We are seeing some value coming in, so that's good that the value is trying to catch up to them. Problem is that they're running out of memory pool space, so there really is like an upper limit to this, and when they run into that limit, it's gonna be pretty ugly, I think. But, you know, let's also realize that one move in and of itself doesn't really predict things. We all think, if there's a move, there's momentum, and things tend to move on momentum. Yeah, that's true, but one particular move in and of itself is not indicative of a future move. Good morning, Stickball. Well, I'm feeling pretty good. We've got news coming out here in a minute. Let's make sure that I got to text to speech on here. Heuristic bias. There you go. I don't know. It's recency bias is what it is. MasterCard to start supporting crypto payments on its networks. That's probably why Bitcoin is breaking out to new highs. I wonder about that, though. How is it that they're going to support crypto payments on its network? That's one where, like, they'll move off of it, but, you know, I don't think that it actually is what people think it is. Okay, so we're looking for continuing claims of 4,490. We're getting... We're just getting 4.54, so it's slightly higher than expected on the longer run. And the weekly, we got 793 versus 757. Okay, so that is higher than expected. I wouldn't say that it's huge, but you know, our how do I say, our expectations on this? If we come over here and we look at the graph, you know, our expectations on this are really, really, you know, screwed with. I would say that it's not a good report, but the market's not reacting too strongly to it so far. Let's see here. We do have some other stuff on deck today, don't we? Mortgage delinquencies, natural gas storage, 30-year bond auction, and supply. I don't know when we get the supply. Yeah, 20-year auction date, I guess. 30-year auction date, 30-year tips auction announcement date. 13-week and 26-week. Okay, so we do get a bit of announcements coming. It looks like the dollar pushing down here again off of those jobless claims. Bank of New York Mellon, the custody bank, plans to eventually treat digital currencies like any other asset. What's up with oil and silver? Well, I already told you, and you weren't here, Michael G. And you're kind of starting to get on my nerves. Stop being an asshole. They moving off of this news, though? Not yet. Somebody is moody today. No. It's just you, Michael. It's just you. I muted you yesterday. And then the first thing he does is he comes back with all capitals. You hurt my feelings. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. I'm not sorry. If it hurts your feelings, tough. Don't be a dipshit. Oh, you are sorry. Okay. Mm-hmm. See, this is the thing is like when I say, hey, you're kind of being, I don't like the things you're doing. The proper response is to shut the fuck up instead of starting to type a ton of messages again. It's probably Salim. That's why I'm kind of, so he's acting like Salim. So yeah. All right. Well, goodbye. Realize that me not liking you is a bannable offense on this channel. I'm just saying. Lucas, how are you? You're in here bright and early today. No, but I love you, Uzi. That's not true. You haven't banned me yet. No, I am. You are probably one of my favorite friends on this channel, and you have been around from the very beginning. You're one of the first people to start talking in chat. We almost always agree on things. I know that was a joke, but oh man, you're one of my favorites. Stickball. He says Seth, and I say Stickball. What? Well, you think that this is gonna do anything? Well, at least someone likes me. I feel you. You know what, Uzi? I think that the way that you feel is just a product of getting old. I think. I realized my warm-up was becoming my trading itself should begin earlier. Better look at context. Yeah. I really think, even if I was going to only trade equities, I would still wake up at 6:30 and watch the 6:30 news, Well, it's 6:30 my time. But, Gary Norton says this a lot. When you saw it happen, there are other things that that the chart can't tell you, You're not doing well with getting old, yeah. So as I was asking my friend the other day, because we talk about Unreal Tournament, and somebody made a video about Unreal Tournament that was basically like, well, Epic should finish it. And me and my friend were like, I don't think that's gonna happen. And he's usually really quiet about it, but he went on the subreddit and he made like a really long ranty post. And I'm like, do you want to talk about it, buddy? We need to come up here and you need to do another episode Behind Unreal podcast. But it was like, I don't even do that stuff anymore. And I was like, it's the same thing. It's like, I would really like to get into a game when I have time. There have been periods where I want to get into a game and I can't. It's like everything that's out there seems stupid. And I'm starting to wonder, is it really that the new games out there suck so bad? Or is it really that I'm just getting older and that as you get older, you don't like that stuff as much for some reason? You know what I mean? So I'm not sure. But hey, if anybody wants to play like Stardew Valley or the Terraria or something, you know, something really relaxing, maybe we could play that on the weekend. Not this weekend, I'm watching the baby this weekend, but bum 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 bum. Wait, where did you get Hawaii? Where did Hawaii come from? Valheim is, wait, what is, I've never heard of that. Valheim? You lost interest in your 30s in games? See, I don't understand. The Viking game blowing up on Steam. Ah. Is it a multiplayer game? Early access, of course. Or is this like the new is this like the new what Elder Scrolls? It is multiplayer. Okay. Valheim on Steam. That sounds German to me. The release date, February 2nd, 2021. So they're past their release date apparently and are in early access. It's $20. Iron Gate Studios. And the graphics are kind of crappy, but that's okay. I'm still playing CS 1.6, but mostly because of it. Now wait, so wait, hold up, because I've been meaning, I want to talk to you now about this, because I've been looking for somebody. I'm like, who plays Counter-Strike 1.6? Why? There are really that many people still playing it. When you go on the Steam stats, there's still a lot of people playing 1.6, and I'm like, why aren't they playing Global Offensive? They're still, you know, they're still adding stuff into Global Offensive. Like they added a battle royale mode and all of this noise. And I was playing it the other day. It was okay. Wasn't the other day. It was like to me, in my mind, like last time I played the game, it was like the other day, but it was like 2 months ago. Mostly because you don't have a GPU. Well, that might be explained. You know, it's really frustrating that the GPUs aren't going down. And apparently the worldwide semiconductor shortage is real. Not good, right? That's like Battlefield 2. Battlefield 2 was the last game I seriously committed to. It sounds like the new Battlefield is still going pretty strong. Call of Duty is still going pretty strong. Maybe I should be playing Call of Duty. I'm sure that would be, you know, those games where it's kind of like run and gun fast action, and you have the. I tend to be pretty good at those once I get into the mode, you know. And that's kind of been my thing, is that the games, they don't really have that. Like, I just want to get in. What I really want to do is I want to play Unreal Tournament, obviously, but I want to come in. I want to wipe everybody's butt for 20 minutes and then be done, you know? But all of these games that they have now, it's like you have to wait in queue for 30 minutes first, and then you have to play it as a team game if you want the action. Or if it's not a team game, it's a battle royale, so you have to spend 10 minutes of every match just finding equipment or stuff. Or if you decide that you're going to be the hot dropper, you go in and you hot drop, and it's extremely unlikely when you hot drop that you're going to win every time. And so you just end up hot dropping and waiting in the queue and the loading screen forever, Which can I say, this is the thing that drives me crazy in games the most, and I really hope with the technology that they're coming out now with streaming into the card and all of that sort of stuff, that it will be like this. You will load into game mode, you will play, and then when you die, it won't go back to some other screen and like load some other screen and then have to, no, it'll keep you in the map the whole time. It will connect to a new server and just move you, because it can just stream the whole level almost immediately, where straight into the card, so you shouldn't have to reload the whole thing. I'm hoping. I was ranked number 9 with the sniper key. Really? In Counter-Strike? Wow. Man, when I was like 19, that Counter-Strike was, Battlefield 2. Oh, I see. When I was 19 and I would work at like a cyber cafe of sorts, and there was this one guy that was so super serious about it. And he got, he basically paid to be able to come in there with his own rig and be on the connection that we had, because we were connected literally into the ISP's backbone. Yeah. And he would literally play Counter-Strike with the op all day. And he was so crazy good. But I was like, I wonder what he does now, because he was like so super serious about it. But back then, like, pro gaming wasn't really a thing, Maybe he's come and gone from the pro scene. Oh, there you go. That was what killed Overwatch for me, the sniping, is like, it was really great. Black Widow was like the greatest sniper rifle in a game ever, and then they nerfed it, and everybody would whine if you played as her, even if you were good at it. Yeah, to prove that you didn't cheat. That's funny. Yeah, back then you win $100, and now you win millions. I don't know about millions, but the pro gaming thing is real. It's kind of interesting. Like, the thing is that before the pandemic, I was looking at pro gaming and streaming too, frankly, and I was like, I think we're in a bubble. Like Ninja and all that stuff. Like I would call it the Ninja streaming bubble, or Ninja was becoming a millionaire off of all of that stuff and everything. I was like, that's probably a bubble. Probably he's going to lose popularity, and Fortnite is going to be not as popular, which is what happened. But that is what happened. But then the pandemic came along. And when the pandemic came along, instead of all of the money like drying up and everybody realizing that we were in a bubble and like a full crash happening, like would normally happen, it was just everybody went on hold. So it was like the esports bubble never popped because of the pandemic. So I don't know but it kind of popped, but it kind of didn't. So I don't know if after the pandemic, like, people go back to it or what. Why don't you raise your kids to become cracked? You know what? I actually tried. I tried to get the 14-year-old to do the aim trainer and start the aim training, but the thing about those kids is they just don't have the drive, man. They really aren't into competitive things at all. It's like if they so like me, I come in, I play Unreal Tournament against bots. I think this game is so much fun. I go online and play, and just realize that I just absolutely suck at it. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm going to sit and just play it until I get good at it. until I'm beating everybody. But my stepkids, no, if they run into something and there's like that are not instantly good at it, it's like, okay, whatever. And even if they're like instantly good at it, they don't sit and, you know, I'm gonna dedicate my life. They don't do that. You played Counter-Strike at 10, yeah. Well, around 14 is when I think you start playing shooters. Probably most shooters aren't appropriate for kids. Certainly not to be playing online. That's something that so super bothers me. You load into a game and you're playing Fortnite with like 8-year-olds now these days, I'm told. That shouldn't be allowed. No. The kids either need to be separated into their own domicile or they shouldn't be allowed to use or listen to voice chat because, yeah, that's trouble. I started shooters at like 6. You might have. I mean, you realize I was 15 when Quake 3 was released, right? So I wasn't allowed to play, but my brothers would play CS and I would annoy them to let me play, yeah. I mean, I played with him. I played with him Counter-Strike for a little bit, but yeah, we weren't that interested in it. So it's kind of... That's the problem. We just need to get into a game, man. I just need to get into a game. My mom said Counter-Strike is right. And the funny thing is that it's not really. It's kind of funny because thinking back on it, well, Counter-Strike does have like the blood and everything when people get shot, but it just seems so cartoony these days, you know? Oh. You know what? The game that always got to me was Soldier of Fortune. So it was after Quake 3 and everything was released, but for some reason they still went off of the Quake 2 engine, which almost everything is like the Quake 2 engine. Like Half-Life was based on the Quake 2 engine, right? And then they went and they made Source, but Source it still kind of has that base, you know, Quake stuff in it. It's different. There's like fundamentally different approaches from like the way the Unreal Engine does it. Anyways, and in that game, it was like depending on where you shot them, they would like play different animations and stuff. And so like you could shoot their foot off and they would like hop and scream. And that game so bloody and so got to me. I played through the demo and I'm like, nope, don't want to play this. Actually, when I was that young, like the blood and like Quake bothered me. Which is funny because the blood in Unreal Tournament was kind of worse in a way, but you could turn it off. Whereas in Quake, you could turn it off, but you had to go into like a... Because in Quake, you kill somebody, they like evaporate into a bloody mist ball. But in Unreal Tournament, when you kill somebody, they like explode into chunks. Well, we played outside with cap guns and bows and arrows. I wonder if we would have played Cowboys and Indians or Batman versus Catwoman on a computer and inside. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Certainly, that's all they do nowadays because you're not allowed out, man. Freaking, oof. I'm interested. That's going to be interesting to see how the spring and summer goes. If people actually, because right now it seems like they're easing restrictions and stuff, but everybody is still acting like. It's still a scary time. And I think that most people are just kind of being like, meh, whatever. Because it's still effing cold out there, right? But once it starts getting nice, I think that people are going to start being like, okay, let us out. I want to go around. I don't want to wear this stupid mask anymore. Ugh. And that's the other thing is like everybody's been vaccinated and you still have to wear the mask. That irks me. Command and Conquer. I remember playing Red Alert, man. Yeah, Red Alert 2 was like the best one. Red Alert 2 was the best one. I had that awesome starting sequence. I remember the starting sequence. Oh, it was so great. So great. But then StarCraft came out. Yeah, and I played StarCraft. I played StarCraft. I played StarCraft on a 28K modem where the game, to keep up with everything, literally had to turn the game to the lowest speed setting, and like a 3-minute rush. You know, this was back when like the spawning pool was 150 minerals and you could just rush and win every time. Took like 20 minutes. I played a lot of StarCraft. Which is funny, I didn't play like it seriously. It wasn't until I got older that I really realized and understood like the metagame behind it. And then and now it's like that's too much work. I would like to go and get good at it, but that's too much work and it's not high enough on my priority list, you know? Sir, this is a GameStop, right? Oh, thanks for talking. Oh, by the way, did I tell you guys about the Yada? So, you know, I was excited last week. Well, hold up. I remember the turning point in StarCraft for me. I got destroyed in a US server by this shit-talking dude, and I was the worst StarCraft player he's ever played. Yeah, well, the thing is that back then, even though there was, like, the internet and stuff, there wasn't really very good places for you to, like, learn the strategy. There wasn't replays. There wasn't online video. And so people didn't really know how to play the game. And it wasn't until long after the game was, you know, considered passed on, like after Warcraft was released and everything, that I think that people started to understand the metagame behind it and found the optimal builds and stuff. It's kind of interesting. And so back then you would go find these situations where you would just randomly run into this person that was just like awesomely good at it and you had no clue why, you know? Anyways, on the Yada thing. So I was excited about the Yada. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a savings account. And I have a link in the video description where you can just use the referral code Speculator Seth. But it's a savings account. You use the phone application. You put money in your savings account. And based on how much money you have in the savings account, you get a lottery ticket every week. And, you know, the more money you have in there, the more lottery tickets they give you. And the lottery tickets add up to more than what you would make with a 1% savings account, a traditional savings account. So right now you get a better interest rate with it. And so I was, you know, last time we talked about this with the kind of during the GameStop thing, I was excited about it because my mom had done it. And so I got all of the tickets from the referral from that. And it was okay. I think I got I had a ticket that got $7, which is actually pretty hard, believe it or not. Man, when you go into it, you start to realize the chances. It's like to get like 2 in a row happens almost every time, but like 3 in a row and then 4 in a row are like really crazy hard. Yeah, lottery bonds. Yeah. Anyways, it's like well, I got another referral. And that referral got me up to 6 total referrals. So I think if we get up to 9, then this happens again. It's cool because when you reach a new level, you get more tickets every week. Like you get like 10% more tickets, but then they also give you tickets for the referral. And then they also give you tickets for reaching the new level. So the tickets for reaching the level is you get 1,000 tickets, which is equal to like a week if you had $20,000 in there, right? So I've been watching that, and I don't know, it's fun. If you haven't tried the Yada thing, go use my referral code, put $25 in there. It's the easiest thing because it's like, it's still your money. So it's like, it doesn't cost you anything, and you'll get bonus tickets from the referral. So like, we both make money. It's just like, it's fun to watch them, I think. And then you'll turn around and you'll try and get all of your friends to do it too, so that you'll keep getting tickets. It's quite devious. But I really like it. Oh, stickball, they have a UK equivalent, really? Oh, okay. Anyways, man, so can I say, to change the subject a little bit, I'm still a little sour about yesterday. Oh, the school's calling me. Why would the school call me? I'm still a little sour about yesterday because I missed the news move. I really should have been around earlier and gotten on that. And then the index is like just completely sold off out of nowhere, and I was clueless. Yesterday was your best day ever? Oh, that's good. I was, and I don't know why I didn't adjust and go short earlier. I guess I didn't really believe it. That's kind of hard because, you know what I was doing? You just buy it. Like, how many times have we seen where there was like a crazy down move and then they completely recovered the whole thing? Yesterday, they didn't completely recover the whole thing. But, yeah, you know, I think that's kind of where the trap that you get into. And since we didn't really know what was causing it, there wasn't really anything to tell us that it was really going to go the whole way, you know? So what, should we just call it an anomaly? Vlad says it was an anomaly. I don't know. It was hard to chase a big drop. Yeah. Well, you kind of saw there at the end where it was like, when I was like, oh, screw it. And I took like I started screwing around with like too many contracts. And I just went straight short. And I actually did get a pretty good excursion even with that. But then it turned back around so quickly. Only after hours you're trying to short. By the way, let me show you something cool. You come back over to here. So I was doing a little bit of math, and it seems to me that there is a time. There's a timing thing to it, I guess you could say. So if you come in here and you say from here to the initial wave, okay, so you'll get, there's a move, and then 2.5 times that move, and you'll notice that it's like significantly less volatile. Let's try it on this move that happened at the end of the day. Sure. So buy, then it ends, and then the market can go back to normal. So it seems to me, based on some things that I've looked at, that the memory function of it, and this isn't like, oh, this is how long it takes for people to like do things. It's more like this is how long it takes for like the order book to even back out, is about 2.5 hours. Where did I get that from? It was on this book. Let me go find it. Where I was getting 2.5. I spent a lot of time going back through that book. It was this book. Here, I'll bring the camera back over to me so we can see the DOM, and I'll find. It was towards the end here, I think. Or was it in the Kyle model? No, it was right here. Yes, here it was. The optimal quantity depends linearly on the information A. So A is like you have a piece of information that you know will move the market. As in the Kyle model, plugging this Q back into the result for T star, which is basically the optimal time frame to conduct your order in, ends up being 2/5 times T of the information, which is like when the piece of information is going to be released. So if we turn that back around and you say you know when T of A is, then the optimal time to do it is going to be, right, times 5/2, which is 2.5. So that's where I got 2.5. That makes sense. I'll show you the other one. Where is the Kyle? Sign, order, and balance. Sign, order, and balance is important. We should look at that again. Kyle. It's up here. Okay. So here we go. We assume that Bob is always the market maker, right? There's Bob and Alice is the information trader, right? Bob knows the net volume executed by the noise traders is a Gaussian random variable with a zero mean and standard deviation equal to the sigma v. That's sigma sign, right? And that the mispricing P of F, which is when the price that you think it's going to be and the price that it is now is a Gaussian random variable with zero mean over time and standard deviation omega f. The latter quantity is related to the typical amount of information available to insiders at time zero, but not yet included in the price. Okay, so I came in and I said, this is just the standard deviation of the price right now, and this is just the standard deviation of the volume right now. And then you come and you look at it. So they're saying that the optimal quantity that you would trade would be 1/2 times the difference that you're looking to capitalize on over, I don't know what you call that symbol, but this is, lambda. This is Kyle's lambda. And then down in here, we go through and how do you calculate Kyle's lambda? Kyle's lambda is equal to the deviation in the price over 2 times the deviation in the volume. So I went and I made an indicator. I didn't mean to click that. I'm not going to show you the code, not because I want to keep it secret or anything like that, but I'm just a little bit like, I'm still not 100% sure if this is correct, even though the math that we were looking at there was pretty simple. I think the big thing is me using the deviation of the price and the deviation of the volume the correct application of the model, right? Anyways, so I made an indicator in here to determine what is the optimal meta order size for Alice, the informed trader. In that scenario, SPS Alice Q. So Q is the size of the meta order, right? And what does it say? So here, it's kind of interesting. And you can kind of see how, depending on what's going on, when there's a lot less noise, this tells you what your optimal, Q would be. And it seems to be in line with it. But look at what it's saying right now. It's saying that and by the way, you have to say like what the difference between them is, right? So in this case, I'm saying we're using a 2-point target. Yeah. We can change this period down. Like if the period is just 10, makes it a little bit more responsive, or we want to smooth it out more. Let's keep it smooth. Okay. So the optimal Q, if we knew something that was going to move at 8 ticks, the optimum Q, according to my calculation, is 332 right now. So what does that mean? That means, to me, my interpretation of it is that if we have something that we think is going to make 2 points, like Ace's signal is a good example, right? Ace's signal, if more than 300 people try to trade Ace's signal, then it will start to reduce the profit overall that's made. Basically, you add any more lots to that, and the impact of the order will be more than what you make from adding on more contracts. That makes sense? Sorry, I wasn't listening. Wait, did I close the window? Sometimes I close windows and I'm like, what the F am I doing? I'll go through the whole thing again for you, right, Ace? So that you can see where I'm getting this stuff, then I'm not just like pulling it out of nowhere. Okay. So there's something called the Kyle model. Okay. And what the Kyle model is doing is they're saying Alice knows something. Alice has, knows that a piece of news is going to hit the market and it's going to move the price to a certain location. So given that she knows that, how many contracts should she trade? Because you take more contracts, you're going to make more money, right? But you're also going to have a larger impact on the price. So what is the optimal number? What is the number at which, you're trading the most contracts that you can without you losing money on it from, the price impact of the execution, right? So he has all of this math here. This is a model that was made in 1985. So CG is a profit maximization. So they're saying that this is the tick size times the number of Q is the size of the lot, or the size of the meta order. In this case, it's a meta order because you're not trading like 230, but maybe everybody that trades that strategy trades 230. Still with me, right? And PF minus P is how much it's going to move. So in our case, PF minus P equals 8 ticks, or 2 points, right? Let's say 2 points. Okay. And then there's this whole thing about what price should Bob use based on the volume that he's seeing to break even, essentially, or to market make correctly, right? So they go through all of this math. Now this is for linear impact. Now that's important to note, because remember we said that the impact of large meta orders is not linear. It's actually a square root function. That is true. And that is very, very important. So there's limitations to Kyle's model, but the impact is basically linear for small lots. So for what we do, for what we do and what we will ever be doing, Kyle's model is probably better to study, even though you can get some insight from, the other, like Chris, I forget, Algom Chris, right? That's where you get into square root impact. Anyways, so then, they go through all of this stuff and you get this maximum Q. So optimal Q is 1/2 that price change that you expect to see over lambda, Kyle's lambda. And then down here, how do we find Kyle's lambda? Well, we use Bayes' theorem, which is, conditional probability. Okay, so when we go through with Bayes' theorem and simplify everything down, we get Kyle's lambda is equal to omega over, or epsilon. I forget what you call these symbols. Omega over epsilon. But at the very end of this thing, there's an index. Well, I'll go look. I'll go show you. The very end of this, there's an appendix that says, okay. So, Greek symbols. Omega is volatility. Volatility of the fundamental price. And the E is the generic root mean square, news term, volume of noise traders, etc. Okay. So I did all of that and I made it. So I took those formulas and I put them into a NinjaTrader indicator, saying that the volatility is the standard deviation of price, and the volume of noise traders is the standard deviation of the volume over a certain look back period. Right? So it's just pretty simple math formula. And we come out onto it right now, and it says if you had a piece of information that would move the market 8 ticks, that the optimum number of lots to trade it right now is 358. Now, I may be misapplying that and everything. Maybe my math is off, but that's what I get. I would like to have a thread about this on Futures.io where we can talk about it and see if what I'm looking at is correct. Now, when the market opens, that's going to go up a lot, right? When the market opens, that's going to be, in the thousands. But for right now, the optimum number of lots is 361. So I found that it can be between 200 and 400 during quiet times, right? So what I'm saying, Ace, is that if more than 361 lots try to trade your signal, it will make the signal worth less. It'll start affecting your trade. So there's a limit on the number of people that can jump on and it'll work, essentially, because they'll jump on and you'll have to chase it, essentially. Where did this document come from? It is a book called Trades, Quotes, and Prices, Financial Markets Under the Microscope by John Philippe Bouchard and Julius Bonnart, Jonathan Donnier, and Martin Gold. So you assume all volume, not all volume is noise traders, but the standard deviation of all volume as the noise traders. So I think that this is a really useful piece of information. Why is that? Because it gives us an idea of when we may need to consider that we shouldn't take a trade or we should. Right? It kind of tells us some things, right? Like when the market gets really active, then it's better for us. We could trade a larger lot. There's less competition. I hardly remember the actual math around functions. Yeah. I think that there's probably some other inefficiencies that we can get out of it. But when I look at this to me is basically what we've created is an indicator, telling you how much you have to worry about competition. So if it's 371 and we're trading something like a moving average, right? If there's more than 371 people trading it, that could be a problem, right? There are more than 371 people trading aces signal? I don't think so. But, you know, you can kind of game that out on certain things. All of a sudden, you can start looking at a more, you know, maybe it involves a more simple setup from other that is more popular. Then maybe you have to think about it. People as in one contract. Yeah. Really, I mean, some people might trade multiple contracts, but what we're saying is everybody trading that strategy can be considered one meta order. And if that meta order is larger than 376, then there's more people trading it than would be optimal. Doesn't necessarily mean that the trade would be completely unprofitable, but just that at that point it's less profitable. So if you were looking at like how, you know, how many people actually trade this, if you somehow were able to know how many people actually trade X thing, like you did a market survey and you saw how many people are trading a certain specific strategy, and then you would go out and you'd say, oh, okay, 400 people trade this thing, so I shouldn't use it right now because the optimum Q is less. That's why I went away from scalping any high frequency trading, so that we want 40 points. Then it changes, right? Now you could trade up to a maximum of 7,500. So you're right. The larger that your target is, the better margin that you have on in terms of having to deal with competition. So you're right. Now, once the market opens up, a 2-point edge is still doable, right? But I think that it just kind of shows that even a retail trader has to worry about competition in certain areas, right? That there are literally spots when it's relatively quiet that if all of the retail traders get into the same trade, it's gonna screw up the trade. Like here with scalping in particular, I think that there's other issues with it that make it hard. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, like, what are the downsides to it? So competition is one. But the thing that I find difficult is that you've really got to know everything that's going on, you know? And you have to execute on it really well. It will be a long time between market makers and high frequency traders fade out swing traders. Well, so here's the thing. So now I'm getting into my own theory. I think that there is a way to mathematically determine this, but I don't think that anybody's done it yet. Okay. So theory. The market cannot be 100% efficient against all strategies all the time. So if we were to only just consider high frequency trading strategies, and we go out there and we say there are 100 different strategies that are, you know, used, or that the market, let's just assume that these 100 strategies are all, you know, good, potentially profitable strategies that the market needs to be efficient against. The market cannot be efficient against all 100 of those strategies all the time. So there will be a section of strategies that are the most effective, the best strategies that it's going to be perfectly efficient against all the time. But there are going to be other ones that it's going to have to pick and choose. That during one period, it's going to be effective against this strategy, and in another period, it's going to be effective against this strategy. And so what happens is you'll get regimes. So it may be that you had a regime over the past 2 years where that signal worked really, really well. But now, because it's worked well, more people are picking up on that it worked well, and so they're trading it and arbitraging it out. So that one is becoming less good. And because of that, other strategies that weren't doing very well before will start doing well. Right? So then you kind of have to understand why the market is efficient against that particular strategy at any time, which is kind of hard because how do you know how many people are trading that? You know what I mean? I guess you could look up at like, okay, every time that this happens, like what does the volume look like? Something like that. There are certainly some things in order flow that I'm like, I just know that they're going to bust through liquidity. And so things like level breaks and trades like that will work really, really well because of the situation, right? But basically, then you kind of have to know in advance if it's a favorable market to that particular strategy, which is hard. I haven't been able to find technical indicators that actually do that. And you have to be aware of like all the news. So like you get a day like yesterday when Tesla gets creamed for no apparent reason, that will kind of screw you up, for instance. Right? And then on top of all of that, you have to actually execute on it well. I heard exactly what you said yesterday in Axia Live. The guy said the market is efficient to factor in all news, but it can only digest one thing at a time. Yeah. Well, and like here again, it's like the more simple of a thing it is, the more likely it is that the market that it will have been traded on already, right? Like there are a lot of robots that can go out there and they can say, based on what the unemployment number is, you take a trade. And it can read exactly the format of the news release and knows exactly what to do. And so that happens almost instantly, right? But how do you program in, okay, we dug into the report and we found that almost all of the claims came from one state where we knew that things were already bad, and that in some other places that actually matter more to the economy, there were actually some really good gains. And so overall, it's maybe not as negative as it seems. And so then you go and you buy it, and, it turns out. And those are the kinds of news trades that I tend to take, right? Are the ones that robots and in the market don't necessarily pick up on right away because it requires a more nuanced analysis that only a person can do right now, right? But it's the same with the technicals. Is like I can see a technical pattern in the level 2 that's so complex that I'm not even 100% cognitively aware of how I see it, versus something that is relatively elementary and can easily be programmed, So if you don't know when to enter and exit a trade on it, well, okay, of course. But so what we're talking about really is more like, say you don't have a strategy, where do you look? Right? Well, these are kind of some of the answers, right? More than 400 people are trading that signal right now, that you're probably unlikely to make money from it. Do more than 400 people out there know about head and shoulders patterns? Like, yeah. So a head and shoulders pattern, probably not a very good edge to be trying to exploit in this particular market right now at this time. You know what I mean? Just like I was saying about chess and martial arts and all that stuff, I call it the idiot strategy. I account for the fact that I don't know anything at all, really. There you go. Who is confident with entries and exits? Well, so I think that I would approach it a different way. It's not like, do you actually know your entries? Like, is anybody ever truly confident about anything? And so there's a word that we typically use on these sorts of things. Proof, right? You say, prove that it works. Well, I could do it one time, and would that be proof that it works? Okay. I could do it 1,000 times. Would that be proof that it works? Well, that's better, right? But does that prove that it will work for me, or that it will continue to work in the future? The reality is that in a market where the actions that we take affect the market, and you can't wind back time, you can never really truly prove something like that, right? So what the best that we can do is we can present empirical evidence, right? So you can go and you can say, here is a specific entry and a specific exit. What is the empirical evidence that you have on that particular setup? Right? So this is where I kind of take issue with a lot of the things that I hear you say, Blunt, is that it's like, okay, so show us a specific setup, the empirical evidence. In science, to prove something, it has to be tested to a certain way, very tiny probability of being wrong, but you can't do that here. Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of it is random, and it can change. Like, that's the funniest thing, is that it can change. But here's the thing where that model that I just gave you there, well, that is for small orders. Probably a hedge fund, they're going to use like Alpecom, Chris, and some of these other ones that factor in the square root of price impact, right? But they calculate that Q. And they say, okay, here's the strategy that we have, and this is how much it's good for, and this is the largest that we can ever scale up on it. And if we scale up on it any more than that, then we risk making that trade go away. And so that's how they're able to continue trading it and it not go away, is because they know how much to put in without screwing it up. Yeah. I think it's a blend of empiricism and antidote, but empiricism is about a standard deviation more important. It's that your screen or my screen shows you fuzzy feelings. So sometimes you will get, it will reduce like the bit rate for some reason, but I'm not using the CPU to do the encoding right now. So if you have it like full screen, it's not going to look quite as sharp as we would like. I'm going to have to buy a new video card to fix that, I think. And right now, I don't really feel like doing that. And so here's where I'm saying, like, what kind of empirical evidence do you have? So here's one piece of empirical evidence that I do have. On technical analysis overall, there has been a number of studies. I mean, it's something that like somebody in academia does like every year, a study on technical analysis. So I saw this one where this guy, he had a robot that was making stuff up with technical analysis. And this robot tried something like 50,000 different strategies, and then they put them through a pretty rigorous analysis of how it did. And their conclusion was that pretty much nothing made it through the gauntlet. So to hear robots buy in downtrends on a short time frame, pushing water up here. So I have one of these that it's a good signal, I think. Or let me say there definitely appears to be something to it, but there are times where it will try trading against the trend. So like the thing I'm really having a hard time with on him is that I want to try and incorporate the trend into it more, so that if we're getting really strong trend, it doesn't try trading against it. But every technical indicator that I've looked at to try and resolve that issue, basically you get a small increase in the percentage of the win rate, but you're like reducing the number of trades by half, so it doesn't help you. Why? Well, I mean, I can't go that deep into the signal itself, but it is taking a spot where probabilistically it's good to fade, let's say. But it's a double-sided thing, right? This is where I'm saying it's like, which mode is the market in? So in a market like right now, it works. Generally speaking, it's good. Because we tend to be range bound. But in a market like yesterday, it doesn't work very well at all. In a market like yesterday, informed traders are trading against the market makers, and the informed traders win. So then the question is, how do you inform the robot about when to take it and when not to? And you'd think, oh, well, you use a moving average. This doesn't work. Or a directional trend doesn't seem to work very well either. And even if I was like looking at like, so like one of the examples is like, it will tend to catch like the bottoms of these crazy days. Informed traders don't long in a bear reverse. Sure they do. They'll take it whichever direction the edge that they have says to take it. I guess they'll factor in the direction of it. But what I'm saying is that the fact that we're above the 10-minute moving average isn't a good enough way to say that we're in an uptrend or a downtrend. Like statistically, that's not good enough. It narrows the sample space down too much. Or, you know, I've tried a bunch of different things. So I've tried like, you know, I always look at a 10 SMA first, because that's the one where like I found that if you trade it rising or falling, that's like the closest that you get to break even just on its own. So we do 10-minute, and I'll go back through and like try all of the different variations of that. And I'll definitely try a longer run moving average, right? So I would expect, you know, like a 50-minute moving average. For instance, one of them is based off of a 50. And that was one of the ones that does pretty well. But yeah, that didn't work. Longer moving average didn't seem to make a difference. And here again, it's like, no matter what, you're basically like eliminating half of the trades anyways, right? So it needs to be something that doesn't eliminate half the trades, right? It needs to be something that eliminates like a third or a quarter of them or something like that. And that the majority of the ones that it does eliminate were bad trades, right? Moving average one, what time frame? So I was trying 10, 50, 120. Or not 120, just 100. Then you've got like directional movement is another one. So we use that. I think I looked at like CCIs. I even tried like the Fisher transform. So I backtested the Fisher transform on its own, and it seemed like that the probabilities it gave me just on its own were kind of iffy. I haven't tried that one with this other setup yet, so I might try that today. But yeah, I'm just having a hard time finding one that I really like. That seems to really oh, whoops. Yeah, that's not what we want at all. Hold on. Okay. Let's see here. Keller says, I think the exponential effect comes into play when good trade played out exponentially can make up for 1,000 craps exponentially. Yeah. That's what we're saying. Like trend is a thing, sure, but I think that it's important to understand why it's a thing. So you get into like the market has a long memory is what the empirical evidence says. The market has a long memory, and the sign of orders, which is whether they're buy or sells, seems to have an effect. Well, it's so close that I don't know if it comes back up here. Maybe I could just get out. But so that what we just had right there is like a good example. We've been moving up, and then somebody came in and sold a ton. So that's like a sign change. So now, for me, if I can scratch it, I think I will, because there was a sign change. Okay. Jay Constant, I really miss out on Bitcoin. I feel bad. You sold everything at 20? Yeah, well, you know what though, Jay Constant? Like, you just got to remember that, like, there's they can just keep going, and like there's no way to know. And it's probably better to sell it early than it is to end up holding it through the whole 80% decline, you know? Sayo says Renko charts seem to be converge well with your directional movement chart. Well, no. So Renko charts, because they redraw things, are not suitable for backtesting. But furthermore, just the way that it goes, like, so I don't think that we might not necessarily realize this when you're not backtesting these all the time. But what really matters with the bar is when it gets calculated. Does that make sense? Because you do like on bar close, and then it does its strategy, does its calculation. And so that's when it kind of matters. So yeah, you could go and you could do a Renko bar, but guess what? If I use a one range bar, I'm going to do my calculation at all of those points anyways, right? So this is where a Renko chart is for you. It's meant to benefit you, the trader, to help you see things, but from a computational standpoint, it doesn't have any benefit. Only good news for Bitcoin. Well, so this is kind of funny, like the stuff from before. So like, remember when it was PayPal, right? So looking back at PayPal, is PayPal going into Bitcoin, was that really a significant reason to buy it? I don't think it matters, because you don't even you get custodianship of the coins. So it's really not even actually Bitcoin at that point, is it? And it's the same thing with the move that moved them up today, that MasterCard's saying that they're going to allow them. It's going to be the same thing as PayPal, right? Now, what I see is that they're in a speculative bubble. So they probably keep going until the bubble pops. The bubble almost popped. Elon Musk prevented the bubble from popping, like straight up. That's what it looks like to me. They're basically going to mainstream away the only real benefit to cryptocurrency is the anonymity. And yeah, so this is where it gets really weird, right? Is that what is the real true investment here, right? Beyond the speculative nature of it. Well, that it's going to be used more? Okay. If people were actually using it right now, and I really mean like really using it instead of just buying it to buy it because they're hearing news about it and stuff, they wouldn't be able to. The blockchain isn't have a large enough block size. The memory pool is already filling up. It creates higher fees. You might as well just use a money transfer. Like the whole benefit of it, they're like running into the upper end of it because of decisions that they made. Bitcoin Cash doesn't have that same problem, but Bitcoin proper core does. And so everybody's kind of investing on, if they're investing, everybody's kind of investing on a long-term thesis that doesn't make any sense. That's just straight up wrong. Like empirically wrong. They literally, the blockchain literally cannot handle the number of transactions that they're talking about putting through it. Not without modifications. So, why are they really getting into it right now? It's not because it's actually increasing in value due to use. They're getting into it right now because of speculation that they're hearing things and that like other people are going to buy it, so I need to buy it. And then there's this whole thing about that like all companies should have a bit of it because it looks good on their balance sheet and people want to buy their stock because they have it. And well, yeah, but like that's a double-edged sword. How far do you let that go? What happens when it comes out and we find out that Bitfinex and Tether really have just been printing things and that it's not backed with dollars, that it's actually backed by Bitcoins again, right? What happens when the US government decides to start regulating these as securities, right? So it's like there's some real problems with it. So you can see it like continuing to go up. That's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good, like we have this idea in our mind that like, well, it moved and you made the trade. And even if you made the trade, then it was a good trade, but not necessarily, right? Because you always have to think about, yes, but in the future that could flip around and it could be really bad. That's because laundering scam money through Bitcoin is pretty standard in Nigeria. Yeah, and well, remember Janet Yellen yesterday saying that they've seen a lot of money being laundered through Bitcoin and that it's a concern for them. Yeah, that's a problem. Okay, so there's the E-mini get back up to the high. It was a good thing I got out of that trade because they definitely would have stopped me out. No. By the way, did you ever look at the Tether printing? Because Tether is printing like $1 billion a day now. No joke. In this case, though, like they printed $1 billion a day, and then the MasterCard thing came out. So, okay. So we just kind of sit and watch it and see how that one plays out. Oh, I'm that boring already, huh, kid? Tomorrow, I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow because my wife has to go early in the morning. I don't know if I'll just have him sit here and we'll just run the stream and I might not be talking or what. Maybe I just can't stream. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so now that I've got this fixed, okay, so I can see Gamestop going, MSTR extending its overnight games up 12%. Let's come over here. Oh, okay. It's not. It's quite back from its overnight highs, but and that's okay. And Tesla is up 2%. So let's change this to TSLA because that seems to be the one that matters for us. Okay. So Seth, you're saying that the crypto can't support the world using it. Like you're saying that the infrastructure isn't good enough. Yeah, correct. So the way that it works is that there's a block, right? So when Bitcoin is doing its thing, there is transactions and they're put into this big long string of code, right? And what the miners are doing is they're taking that block and they're finding a solution to it. And the solution is going to depend on all of the transactions and stuff inside of it, right? So Bitcoin has decided that the size of that block is 1 megabyte. Okay? Which means that there is a limit to how many transactions can be done in a single block. And it takes, because of the difficulty and everything else that they add on top of it, it takes about, 10 minutes, I think it is, to complete a block. So there are a certain number of transactions per 10 minutes that can be done. Now, the solution to this is that there is a fee. So you can attach a fee to your transaction, and then the miners will pick the transactions with the highest fees and include those. Right? So what I'm saying is that they intentionally kept the block size small so that they can make more from the fees. But the problem is that then what happens is that if you want to actually have your transaction done in a reasonable time, you're paying more than you would with the traditional transaction systems like a money transfer, right? So Bitcoin, this limitation was never intended to be a thing. The reason that it's in there, that the blocks are 1 megabyte, is because there was an attack of some sort, and Satoshi said, well, the easiest thing to prevent this kind of spam is to just limit the size of a block for right now. And then in the future, when we are bigger, we won't need this anymore because there will be more legitimate transactions and the spam transactions will just be discarded. Okay? So, at some point, there was a big argument about it in the cryptocurrency world. And the majority of all of the longer term people that had been like true believers from the beginning and had been developing and things like that, like Roger Ver probably being the most prominent among them, said, well, Satoshi always intended that we were going to increase this block size limit. Now, another group of people said we shouldn't increase the block size limit. We should do this SegWit thing. And what SegWit is it changes the way that the addresses are done so that it gives you a little bit more space in the block. But even then, you still kind of have this upper bound of a 1 megabyte block. But the thing is that the people that were in charge of the project at that point, and it wasn't really even like the people that were there from the beginning per se. It was like a company was made and they were given ownership over the GitHub repository, right? And Satoshi is gone. So he can't come in and say, okay, you guys are in charge or you guys are in charge. So these people, Bitcoin Core, took over and they decided that they were going to go the SegWit route. And all of the other developer people were like, well, no, that's not what was intended. So there was a split. And that is what created Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin Core, right? And there's been all sorts of, campaigns back and forth and everything. But the gist of it is this: Bitcoin Cash doesn't have a limit on how many transactions can go into a block. So they clear out all of their transactions very, very quickly. And I mean all of their transactions. Even if you put like a 0 bounty on it, they can clear those all within a day. Whereas in Bitcoin Core, there are transactions over there in the memory pool that haven't been taken in yet for months. And so what I'm saying is that if people actually start using the coin, because if you come in and you buy Bitcoin and you just leave it there on the exchange and you never use it, then it doesn't really matter, right? And most people aren't doing that. Nobody's going to the gas station and buying a pop and using Bitcoin to pay for it, and then having to send that transaction to the blockchain, right? Because are you going to pay $20 to do a transaction of Bitcoin to buy, a soft drink? No, you're not going to, right? So most of the activity is pure speculation. And so what I do is I look at how much of the actual transaction activity is going on there and compare that to the price, and I use a ratio, and I use that to determine when we're in a bubble, right? So we're in a bubble. And the problem with the bubble is you say, well, it could keep going if there's like continued good news. And that's true. But at some point, they're going to run into this limit where the memory pool is going to be so big that it will be a problem. And when that happens, it will probably cause price. I mean, in the past, when this has happened, and it's happened at least twice now, price falls. And it's a problem because then anybody that like wants to get out, like, can't. So that's the whole thing with Bitcoin. I heard that there were changes to Bitcoin to make it harder to transact, to make it more of a store of value. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, though, is that the reason that the Bitcoin Core, as far as I can tell, the reason that those guys took the position that they do is because they wanted to mine and make money from mining. You see that? Damn it. Made me chase it. Where are we looking at over here? Six says, yeah, that's dumb. Well, I think it's dumb. But it was their opinion was that we don't want people to transact on Bitcoin. See, because they believe, and I mean rather ironically, that the way that you make money from Bitcoin is from people buying it and never selling it, right? Which is to say that they believe that it's speculation. They make their money from people speculating on it and not from people using it. The problem is that speculation comes and goes, right? What do you do when there's not speculation? Well, if you're the United States and you have a currency that people have to use no matter what, then it's okay because they still have to transact, right? But if you're Bitcoin, then you're screwed. What they really should be pushing is more people to use it. The more people that actually use it, the more stable it's going to be. And then you could use it for things, right? And then the only thing that would be an issue is like the actual health of the economy, because the amount of use that's going to be on it is going to be directly related to, the economy, how healthy the economy is, which means it's deflationary, which is a real problem if you base your whole economy on it. But, that's what they want to do. So, okay, so we're still seem to be in a bear here. And I still kind of have myself on probation here, so haven't taken one in the more serious sim account yet. I probably missed some stuff. What about Ethereum with proof of stake? So this again is all just a concoction to try and convince people to hold it instead of using it. Like, this is where it just gets silly. And Ethereum has gone with that same general idea that we want to be a store of value and not actually be used. Even though Ethereum, like the whole point of Ethereum was to make more utility to it. Man. Well, they seem pretty bearish, but there actually is a lot more pushback on this. It's kind of curious because Tesla now is not the one that's careening. Gamestop is pretty... they're trying to pump it, but... MSTR is coming back down pretty fast. Is Bitcoin itself coming? Well, no, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Silver's doing okay. Oil's doing okay. Dollar's coming back a bit. There's a little bit of sign change there. Just released Biden's plan to reopen schools 1 day per week. Come. Morning, Scott. How you were short from 15? Oh, how did the robots handle all this? Indy caught his short. Indy is the one that I was talking about that trades against the trend. So now the issue with Indy is, does he actually get his target? That's a different issue. But this is where I'm saying that it's like what the current trend is not a good enough heuristic of what it's going to be. When did that happen? It's here right now. Is like, okay, well, like we fell down. So what do you use? So if we use the super smoother, we are above the super smoother, even though the super smoother is pointed down. So that's kind of an interesting dichotomy that you got on here. If we use the SMA, we're below the SMA, but we've kind of come up above it a little bit a few times, right? If you use directional movement, it depends on how far your directional movement is. But if we were to say ATIX, then it's actually up. If you use where we are compared to the open, then we're down. You know, like there's all of these different options and you look through all of them, they all kind of say something different right now. And which one is better? And you go and you do a back test and it seems like they all suffer from the same problem. But what I can do is I can use news. I can look at the sentiment and the things that are moving the market today and determine based off of that. Well, I can see that Apple and Google are down, but only just a little bit. Don't really know why it's down, so I can come in and I can say, well, there doesn't appear to be any real reason, so we should fade it. Am I smart or dumb selling MJNA at 0.222? I don't know. It sounds like it's a marijuana stock, isn't it? I haven't really been following that. There's been like in the past, it was like I wouldn't recommend getting in on the like last time around that marijuana stocks were going off. Was like, yeah, you don't want to touch it. But I don't know if it's different now that Joe Biden is in and everything. I mean, it sounds like Congress may do something about it, but so I can kind of see a spot forming here. Can you see it? Here's my prediction. We'll leave it up there and see how good we are. Oh, wait, why won't it draw? I'm having that freaking issue again where like sometimes it just doesn't. Okay. Clear. It'll be like this. A Tokyo Olympics chief Mori resigns after telling press briefing that women talk too much. Oi. Oi. It's actually, it looks like it's a little bit more like this. So it looks like we got pretty bad positioning done it. Okay. Yeah, I can gotta erase that since we moved the DOM. Pretty sure the weed socks are another fake silver squeeze kind of. I don't really feel like the silver squeeze thing was necessarily fake. Like, the thing that I think is so funny about the silver squeeze is that all it took was people going around town and buying it on the weekend to cause the market makers to like raise their price. And I think that they could have created a lot of havoc. Now, this whole thing that they can create a short squeeze in silver is kind of silly. The commodity market doesn't work the same way, right? But you know, if they had pumped it, I think it probably could have become a bigger deal than GameStop. But I don't think that the weed stocks are anything. I think that it's just kind of what happens. And it's really common for the weed stocks to come and be a thing. That's like probably the second or third time I've seen it now since we've been doing this stream. I'm not sure who you're talking about, Scott. Oh, that guy. Yeah, that's right. Oh, now I remember. Well, he was here yesterday, but he's not here today. Maybe I was mean enough to him to get him to go away. Jesus love, yeah. I don't know, man. This is kind of funny. I don't know. The thing is that at the time that they were talking about the silver, I thought, hey, you know, silver looks good. After yesterday's inflation number, you know, I was a little questioning it a little bit. But then I go and I look at silver and gold and like they're doing okay. The dollar's still, you know, pushing lower lows. So maybe the silver trade is still a good one. I don't know. That'll take a lot longer to figure out. Although I do kind of feel like that the fact that Reddit like poo-pooed the trade so bad maybe means that maybe it's actually a good trade. You know what I mean? It's just like with the weed stocks, I don't know how much upside they potentially have in them, but the fact that they're going right now doesn't make me want to buy them, right? Like, I need to have some reason to think that I'm in early, you know? Twitter has locked the account of James O'Keefe and Project Veritas for reporting on Facebook Vice President Guy Rosen in his statements that Facebook freezes comments in places that algorithms think there may be hate speech. Interesting. So there hasn't been much of a change in the volume for the past 10, 15 minutes now, actually. They're coming back into the low liquidity spot. So do you see that? That was probably a stop run. My thinking is that if I bought 38 cents on hype, there will inevitably be just as much hype on it again. At some point, I will ultimately probably see 38 cents again, but I'm willing to sell now. Well, just why is it that hype now will result in more hype later? I think that if you're going to play it like that, that you need to quantify it, right? You can come in and you can say, okay, on these Reddit sentiment indicators, when, you know, there's been X number of comments on it, and they tend to go this many number of comments. So this particular thing, I would expect, based on the fundamentals behind the trade, that it will get to that point. And so now I know that I'm in early enough in the trend that the sentiment is not so high that, you know, it's already over. So did that make sense? No hype in 2013, but I guess you have a point. Yeah. So you know, that's the way that I look at it. So when I'm hearing the S&P 500, for instance, if I see a move, say, so like right there was a little bit of a buy, would that be enough to continue buying? Well, in this market, it's been really slow here for 15 minutes, and we're kind of coming up in in a spot where I think that it'll pick up a little bit. So yeah, I think that a move back to the open would be appropriate, and that we'd be getting into it relatively early. It's not so much that I would be chasing it, but you know, this looks like something that's going to be able to continue, and I can judge it like that. And I will, you know, going back to the earlier discussion, I will I mean, look, I'm against the trend right now, right? At least on the daily trend. So far, we're down for the session, and I'm long right now. Depends on which metric you use for your trend, right? Oh, geez, Biden. I have issued a proclamation to terminate a national emergency at the U.S. border with Mexico. Okay. Taking bets now on when Biden declares a new national emergency at the U.S. border with Mexico. I bet you that it will be by March 31st. Before March, that's my prediction. A month, yeah. As soon as the weather gets good, they're coming. And if they say like, oh, not now, there's still a pandemic, then it will be the fall. But there's going to be a flood of people gonna try and come over now. Okay, so here in the volume profile, we can kind of see a little bit now. There was definitely a decrease in liquidity right through here, right? And there's definitely this thing right here selling. But then there was also a little bit of selling through here. And what happened was once they broke through this, the liquidity, the latent liquidity still kind of got out of the way. So now what happens is, now what's happening is it appears to me that the buy side demand has increased. And you can see that here in the increased cumulative delta, that all through here nothing was happening, and then the increased cumulative delta. Like the buy side demand has increased, but this supply still through this area. Supply is still through this area. It seems like it's still there. Should draw them with colors or something, huh? Can do yellow, and what does red look like? Sure. So now the question becomes, do they get stuck in this area up in here around 39.13? Or are they able to just whip up through it? Because if they're able to get back up into it like 39.15, probably they go all the way back through it up to 18. And then at that point, they would be above the open. So maybe they go on for a bull day from there. That's what I'm thinking right now. The weather is always good in Mexico. Well, you don't want to cross the Rio Grande in February, Ace. My understanding is that you don't do that in February. But then once March comes along, that's the nice weather, and that's when a lot of people. Before that's when it came through, right? Man, do you guys remember talking about all that stuff? That seems like ages ago to me. I think that your brain has like a limited, amount of like direct memory access sort of a thing. And so because so much has happened with the pandemic, I'm starting to forget some of the stuff that happened before that. When before that, I could almost draw the chart for you. Here it's full of shopping carts and hookers. No. It's a dangerous river, apparently. Weren't there kids in cages? Did I dream that? So yeah, I kind of feel that's a little overly dramatized, right? They had shelters created that were created by the Obama administration to deal with children who were coming across the border by themselves, that they hold in there. And yeah, they did have like chain link fences in them, but it's not like it was like, people being held like animals or anything like that. In fact, do you remember all that stuff where like later Congress people were going and looking at the stuff, and the place that the kids were like the larger one that the Obama administration had created was like actually a pretty nice place, and was probably nicer than where they would have been otherwise. So it was just kind of like, I don't know. But that's like propaganda war kind of a thing, right? So really what it comes down to is what particular thing do what policy should you have, really, right? Every cage had 2 Xboxes. No. So if your policy is that we should just let everybody that comes across come across, then I guess. But there's real problems with that policy, right? If you don't want to just let everybody that wants to come across, then you kind of have to do something to deter people from trying it, don't you? And even though the Donald Trump administration's initial response was awful, I think that they figured it out. And it's disappointing that it's just going to get dismantled, because I think that they had created a system that was working. But that's going to be the argument, right? Because it sounds like the policy now is that they simply won't enforce it at all. That anybody that comes across will be allowed to stay and at the very least claim asylum. And then after a year, when their asylum claim is denied, or maybe they change the rules and they do start accepting them on asylum. But if they're denied, they'll just stay and nobody will ever force them to go back. That's what's going to happen. And that means that a lot of people are going to try and come. Like everybody in Honduras is going to be coming. So then Trump made this thing where it was like, we will have shelters in Mexico and you can stay in Mexico together as a family and wait for your asylum claim. And then when your asylum claim is denied, then you just go back home. And that wasn't good because why? Because nobody's going to get their asylum claim approved. So none of them are going to get in. So there's no point in bothering to come, right? Then we can clear out Honduras and make it into a nice place. I wish it worked that way, Ace, but it doesn't work that way. This is one of those things that one of the arguments that I hear on the left side is, well, the reason that these countries have the problems that they do is because of us, and we need to put more development into them, and then they will be nice places. No. I'm sorry, but it's just not. It's just no. The simple fact of the matter is that in that country, people are making choices that are making that place not a very nice place to live. And you can give them a ton of money and do all of the things that you want, but it's not going to change their fundamental beliefs and habits and so forth. What do you mean? Well, like the gang culture. Then in Honduras, it's gangs, right? If they're gonna let all that cheap labor into the country, they better let me hire them. Yeah, right. That's jeez, that's funny, Uzi. I mean, you're totally right. Is that you get all of this low labor. So if you try and follow the rules, then you get hurt by the people that aren't following the rules because they pay less for the labor. But then you don't want to go and do something illegal. Man. Nah, it's not gang culture. How about Iraq and Afghanistan? Well, there's a perfect example too, right? The Afghanistan in particular, we were there for a really long time, and it doesn't seem like we really made a fundamental change over there, did we? And we dumped a ton of money into those countries. You looking for a short here? Well, I do have to say, this trend that we've had here has been pretty weak. Sean P. McCarthy. It makes me sick how affluent people relentlessly mock the idea of economic anxiety. The idea that the actual mass murder that neoliberalism has unleashed might be fueling extremism and reactionary backlash. They deserve the whirlwind they'll reap. And Glenn Greenwald retweeting it saying harsh but true. Huh. Oh, what happened over here, by the way? Oh. Nope. Hmm. Okay, I'm hearing that they're not going to repeal the SALT cap in the COVID relief bill. You're making a 20-year-old argument no one disagrees with? Yeah, you're kind of going off on your own thing now, brother. Pretty much widely accepted fact now that they had nothing. Okay, we are going to have some oil report news here. Sounds like it's a build. The swings are getting a little messy here, don't you think? I think it has more to do with this area here at 13, right? Like we called it, didn't we? You could see it almost immediately, and now you're seeing the volume build up there. It's not because they really like that area. It's because the liquidity just isn't there. And it looks like I'm going to have to scratch it. Well, let's reduce our risk a little bit there if we can. Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, jeez. Are we still trading that tight, huh? Okay. Apple seems to be moving around a lot here for some reason. That sucked because I held out for a long time and it was a good trade, and I was never able to. I didn't take the profit when I probably could have because I was expecting more. I'm a little disappointed that they got up to all the way up to 39.15 and then didn't go for the open. So you against immigration? No, they're against illegal immigration, right? He said he was totally against him. I know what he said, but I mean, what happened in the past doesn't necessarily have any impact on what's best thing for me right now. This is the one of the problems with the immigration debate, right? That I don't think that people acknowledge is that there are people that are negatively impacted by immigration, even if it's just in the cost of increased competition, right? And for them to say that they don't want that particular thing is they're perfectly within their rights to do so. I can't, slam people for pursuing what's in their best interest. And this is why I always, whenever I hear the kind of like the moralizing arguments, especially from Democrats these days, I'm always like the red flags are going up in my mind, because the only reason that you turn to that kind of an argument is because you're trying to convince people to be in favor of something that's explicitly against their interests. Yeah, they're working poor are hardest hit by unmitigated immigration. This is true to a point. Now, we should also acknowledge that the majority of the work that comes from immigration is from migrant labor and jobs that aren't like all year round. The majority. But clearly, for Uzi, for instance, it seems to me that it negatively impacts his business if other people hire illegal workers and he can't. And let's be frank here, Democrats, well, they're making and they're claiming that they have an argument that's moral. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's explicitly moral. Is it moral to use people and the tough situations that they're in as a political weapon against your opponents so that you can keep political power when really you don't give a crap about those people? Is that moral? I don't think it is. Almost shares indicated to open at 61 in market debut versus IPO price of 43. I'd hire all the migrant labor in the world. Problem is customers. I'd pay migrant labor fair wages that customers don't want to pay for. What you're saying is, oh man, that's kind of nasty. Well, the way that I would think about it, in terms of like a framework that you can use to look at political situations and the political narratives that the two parties are using to determine what is likely to happen out of all of that, and what kind of an impact it will have on the markets, right? The framework that I would really look to is this. Democrats are far more concerned about appearances in political debates. Republicans are kind of masochists. The Republicans expect to be the unpopular ones because what is good and right is never popular. I should still be on this, but I don't know if right now is the best time to do it. Republicans expect to lose, essentially. Like that's kind of like the good Christian way. and here in my area, everybody is Mormon. And when you go to church, the discussion is always that in the latter days, everybody will become evil and we will be a far minority, and everybody will be saying that we're wrong about things, but we have to stay on and continue to do what we know is right. And that tends to be like a Christian right kind of attitude, is very common among Republicans. And so they tend not to care what people think about their positions. They only care what they think they're doing is right, which was different from what Donald Trump did, right? Because Donald Trump came in and said, well, it doesn't matter what I say. What I'm going to do is the things that are in our best interests, or accomplish the thing that I want to have happen, right? Which was different. Democrats, on the other hand, are much, much more aware of how people will perceive things. And so their tactics and their strategies and the positions that they take almost always factor that in, probably too much. That, okay, so if they want to push against something, they're not going to go out and make a logical argument like, oh, well, we should increase the minimum wage, because if we increase the minimum wage, then it will have this an impact on the economy. And here's a big model that you can use to see what the impact on that economy will be. And here's the historical evidence that shows how well this model predicts what's going to actually happen. Do you ever hear that from Democrats? Never. You will literally never hear that from a Democrat. What will they say? You need to increase the minimum wage, or you're immoral. You're an evil, bad, nasty capitalist person that's keeping the working poor people down by not paying them what they're worth. Shame on you, nastiness. That's the way that Democrats play it. Always. And you can use that to predict what they're going to do. Like literally. to their detriment. That was how Donald Trump was able to goat them so much. Was he knew that they were going to go in and do that, and then he's like, okay, fine, I'm just going to do the thing that I want to do, and then people will see how beneficial it is to them, and they won't care what you think. And that's what he did, and it worked. To a point. Didn't overcome his personal negatives, did it? Just don't freaking bomb them. Well, listen, that's a way more complicated of an issue. That kind of goes beyond where I can have where I have any real good knowledge about it. The history of U.S. intervention in foreign countries is long and hard and goes back all the way to the end of World War II. And there's all sorts of complicated politics and behind the scenes stuff and the way that the foreign policy establishment works that I don't completely understand, and frankly is very rarely, if ever, actually relevant to the market. Immigration, on the other hand, is relevant to the market. And when we saw a border crisis before, we saw market moves off of it, didn't we? My recollection being that they were kind of risk-off events. But they were also very, very mixed. So if we do see that, we should probably be cautious to not overread too much into it, huh? But probably we could make some calls on that, right? Like, the net effect is that the number of Mexican immigrants, illegal or otherwise, in the United States over the next 4 years is going to increase dramatically. And any company that is levered to be able to take advantage of that is probably going to make a lot of money. I mean, it's true. You get people who vote $15 an hour for minimum wages, but won't pay for it. Instead, they support open borders so they can pay illegal immigrants pennies on an hour. Well, but if they change that, then the illegal immigrants should make $15 an hour too, right? Because like the illegal immigrants are the only ones that make the $7. I find it ironic that the media that hated interventionist neocons like Bill Kristen and David Frum now love them. Oh, and George Bush is now cuddly. Well, yeah, that one is interesting, RJ. I kind of wonder though, did the media ever really hate interventionist neocons like Bill Kristen and David Frum? They hated Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was always the one that they hated. But these interventionist neocons, that's not what I remember. I remember us going into Iraq and Afghanistan and the media being totally okay with it and basically supporting the U.S. arguments for going in. Meanwhile, the far left in the country throwing an absolute fit over it the whole time. Them, I think, in retrospect, being correct. I think the reality is that probably since Carter, that kind of wing of the foreign policy establishment has been in firm control of both sides of the political aisle and of the media. And after Obama came in, and he also played into that particular strategy, the media basically just like stopped covering it. You know, that's what I remember, at least. But it's a little hazy. It's a long time ago. I was referring to far left media even loves those guys. Corporate media, you're right. Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah, moveon.org, it's always been like if they're a Republican, you got something bad to say about them. Oh, man. This is where that's one of those things that always drives me crazy is like, there are some people that are like the equivalent of people like Bill Kristen and David Frum on the left, but more in the form of like economics, that mainstream media gives a lot of support and help to, and don't really acknowledge how far left their economic ideas really are. I mean, they're not like Marxists, but a lot of the ideas that they have about economics are kind of, well, they're very much in the like, well, we'll just take on as much debt as we ever want, is what it's coming down to. Take out a lot of debt to be able to do services, and it's okay because we'll just charge more taxes. So we won't create inflation because the taxes will be higher. And the problem with that argument is that GDP growth decreases under that situation. So you never really truly pay off the debt until it becomes a problem. I don't think it'll work. They're going to do it, though. It won't be like straight up MMT, but it looks like that's pretty much the path that the current Congress is going to go down. The TARP program apparently turned a profit. Yeah, you know what? I'm 100% in favor of bailouts, to be honest with you. This is the position I hold that Republicans hate. See, I have things, I always look at who my audience is and try to, tell that audience the things they don't want to hear. And that's the one that Republicans or conservatives, really, it's more conservatives, don't like to hear, is that bailouts are good and have always happened. The only difference with the TARP bailout was that it was the U.S. government doing it, because before it was going to be J.P. Morgan and the banks and whatever. And this always happened. And then there was the crisis in the 1980s See, here's the way the history went, was in the 1980s, there was the savings and loans crisis. Okay, so those were all loans that were owned by the government anyways. So in that instance, it made sense for the government to just take it on and bail out the savings and loans companies. Okay, so they took care of it, and like it went away, and like that was the end of it, and it was over really, really quickly, right? So then everybody started saying, oh, the government actually doing this, maybe they're not too bad at it. And the government has a really big balance sheet, so they can leverage. So all of a sudden it was like, the government should do this. So then the TARP bailout came, and they decided to let the government do it. And instead of the private, because there was another bill, nobody ever talks about this, but the Republicans had a bill where banks and other companies got together and did the bailout, and they didn't use taxpayer funds, and those companies would have been the ones that profited, and they didn't do it. They were said, we can't wait that long, and we've already got this bill, and so they just pushed ahead anyways, in spite of the majority of the Republicans being against it, but thinking we have to do something. And then that kind of brings us to today, where now it turns into anytime that anything is even slightly going wrong, Congress and the Federal Reserve needs to come in and bail everybody out. And that's how it got to this spot. Now, from a policy perspective, bailouts are good, and I'm actually not opposed to the government doing it. But the thing that makes me mad, frankly, about it is that the government probably could have made 2 or 3 times more money on the TARP program than they did. Like it turned a profit. Yes, they could have made twice as much. Like they literally, it was like Citigroup. It was like, okay, Citigroup is in good health and we made money on it, and now we need to divest ourselves from it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to literally tell everybody that that's what we're doing so that they can front run us. Instead of slowly taking their position off over time as it continues to move up, make a good profit off of a company that was going to continue going up for 10 years with the rest of the economy, and being sly and not telling anybody about it. Because if the private companies had done that, that's what they would have done. Why didn't the government do it that way? We could have made twice as much on TARP as we did. Okay, what about the moral hazard bailouts create? Are you also for legislation that combat the moral hazard aspect of it? Okay, so the moral hazard aspect of it exists because there's no choice but to bail them out, right? But here again, there were always bailouts in the past. Okay, so in the 1920s, for instance, the beginning of, or was it 1907? Or maybe it was before that. Yes, it was the Panic of 1907. Traders were trading with excessive leverage, and they were buying stocks on margin. And then finally there was a down day, and all of these guys lost money on margin, and they couldn't pay it back. And so there was just a complete tailspin in the markets because of all of the margin calls, right? And so there was a bailout. They got bailed out. And JP Morgan basically got all of the banks together and said, we'll bail you guys out. And they did it. Okay, so now a question. Did JP Morgan create a moral hazard when he did that? I don't think he did. Right? It seems to me that the moral hazard thing wasn't a thing until 2008. Right? So although I don't have all of the answers on that, I think that there is a way to do it where you can bail people out but not create moral hazard. And frankly, when it comes to like the banks and stuff, like that's one thing. If it's a couple of big banks and they are an important sector and they're very heavily regulated, so okay. But then it's like, what about college? Okay, now we're really, really talking about moral hazard. Can you imagine the moral hazard we're creating when we're telling people you can go and you can take thousands and thousands of dollars out in student loans? You can do whatever. They might have gone out and just partied with it and not have even gotten a crappy degree, and the government's just going to straight up pay for it. Like, come on. Why does anybody have an incentive to do anything right now. And yeah, it was kind of like that with the housing crisis too. Like there was the banks thing, but then there was the other thing of like, we'll just pay your mortgage off. Like, come on. And then what do all of the people that actually work hard and do something get? Oh, we're going to increase your taxes. Yeah, that's creating moral hazard. That's causing a problem. That's going to cause a long-term problem, a really big long-term problem. Because those people that got their college degrees paid off, I don't think that they're going to be responsible in the future. But also, I don't think that you're getting a very good multiplier on it. That is to say that as stimulus goes, it's not a very effective one. Oh, we haven't talked about economics in this way in weeks. It's kind of nice. Are you guys, how many people did we scare away with that? What do we got? We have 37 viewers, so probably 10 people were like, oh, it says talking politics again. Now I don't know. What do you consider moral hazard? So what a moral hazard is when actions by the government encourage people to act in a way which is immoral. So in this case, the thing that is immoral is taking on excessive debt for a college education that's not going to help you out in the long run. And the government is encouraging people to do that by bailing them out. That's what makes a moral hazard. Okay. You graduated in 2009. It was miserable. Yeah, that was around the time that I graduated too, Keller. It's also like spring of 2009. Or no, it was January of 2010. How does bailout not encourage malinvestments? Well, the bailout itself doesn't necessarily encourage malinvestments. But when people believe that if they fail that they're going to get bailed out, the future expectation of a bailout doesn't it? We're having a problem with that right now. That's where it kind of goes into with the way that the banks work. So I think that to get into this, I think that we have to talk a little bit more about how do banks actually work, right? Because banks don't really invest the same way, right? Banks have investments because they have to hold it as collateral, right? They can't just hold everything in cash because at their level, what they're losing on inflation is significant. And so they have to put those things into assets that appreciate over time to overcome the inflation. Okay. And so they went in and they said, okay, well, we don't want you to get too much into a certain type of asset, though, because that would be too risky and it would risk the bank. So we're going to make these standards to tell you what you can invest in and what you can't. And so one of the things that they said was, well, you can invest in housing because housing is a really, really reliable source of income and we think is safe to invest in, right? And so they had all of these requirements that basically said, will allow you to buy more housing than normal because it's safe. And because the housing was the thing that made the most money, that was the thing that they all bought. Because within the system that was created, that was the optimal portfolio. So what really caused the malinvestment in that particular case? It was the what is it, Basel? I forget what they call them. It was the banking collateral requirements, essentially, that basically drove the entire industry towards leveraging itself in this way, right? That's a little bit different from what we're seeing now, where everybody thinks that the Federal Reserve or Congress is going to come in and dump more money into the market anytime that anything goes even remotely bad. So we can just dump as much money as we can YOLO into whatever stock that's clearly overvalued because we don't have to worry about the downsides. It's different. It's a different thing, right? I'm still struggling. I went through some bad personal stuff at the end of college, and my life has been in a vicious downward spiral. Oh man, Keller, I don't know, man. So The only thing that I can say about that is that stocks and futures and day trading is for people that generally have things figured out. This for people that are doing pretty okay already and have excess capital to be able to risk. Because the reality is that day trading is a zero-sum game, even in stocks, and that there's a 95% chance that you're going to lose it all. 95%, right? And the only people that really end up becoming profitable off of this are people that are able to stick it out for years and years and years. So can you afford to put my okay, that's sell. The fetch was that? Schumer, I backed the House Democratic plan for $1,400 checks for incomes under 75K per person, phrasing that out above and cutting off at 100K per person. That can't be it. What the heck was that? Give myself a little bit of room here. Okay. Day traders that lose money continue to trade for an average of 10. No, they don't. That's not true at all. So the empirical studies that I have read says that 80% of all traders quit before 3 years. Now, that said, I have met people that have been trading for 20, 30 years, and well, they've had periods of success and they've had periods of losses. You got short and you took that? Wait, did you catch it? That was nutso crazy, wasn't it? What moved when it happens? I don't really see the clear. Like Apple and Google are still kind of just slightly okay. So I don't even see a reason in specific stocks. I see, yes. I'm surprised you took that one. Russia issues rare call for restraint from Iran after uranium metal. Man, what was that? Well, So I'm looking here again in my robots, and it's kind of a similar thing today where they actually caught some good trades, but they're not really making money overall because they aren't getting their targets. So we need to bring them in. I think you sold most of your GME at the intraday. Oh, really? I like at 60. I'm surprised that people are still trading that thing. I'm surprised that it's not at 20. But the what do we call it? The confirmation bias over there, and that thing is crazy strong, right? Maybe it's no, that was informed trading. 2,000 contracts don't just come out and sell for no reason. And you can see that the market makers have adjusted for it too, right? Well, it's unfortunate that we didn't get more out of that, isn't it? White House rejects reports administration is reviewing possible domestic travel restrictions, saying no specific decisions are under consideration. GameStop is looking to go negative on the day here. Okay, Pelosi is going to be speaking here. So you know what? I need to take my break. I'm just going to leave that on. I'm going to be right back.
Including 1 million moms. That's why this bill is so important, because it has a strong commitment to child care so that parents, moms and dads, are able to go to work. It has a strong commitment to getting our kids back to school, another path to the workforce for moms. Last month, January, nearly 80% of workers who left the workforce were women, and in December, it was 90% of those who had left the workforce were women. The women's labor force participation rate is now just about 57%, the lowest level in 33 years. For women of color, the situation is even worse. Again, that is about the livelihood of the American people, about the lives of the American people. I talked about 10% unemployment, as quoted by the chairman of the Fed, Chairman Powell. Another number that is just so sobering is 470,000 Americans have died of the coronavirus. 470,000. Again, this legislation that we're passing now so addresses the needs of the American people when it comes to the coronavirus. It's about the lives and the livelihood of the American people. We're proud, again, of our committee chairs who are moving ahead expeditiously with 9 committees working on marking up legislation for the American Rescue Plan this week. They're moving forward to crush the virus. The funding there for virus production, distribution, for testing, et cetera, for other funding in terms of access to health care. Again, the goal is to put vaccines in people's arms, children back in school, workers back in their jobs, and money in people's pockets. And the money in people's pockets, we're very proud that in the legislation, we in the House, the Education and Labor Committee marked up its bill on Tuesday until 4 a.m. Wednesday morning.
Okay.
Big part of money in people's pockets in the Education and Labor Committee, in addition to making our schools safe for our children to go back to school. In the bill, it gradually raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour, increases paychecks. In doing so, increases paychecks for 27 million workers and pulling nearly 1 million people out of poverty. Well over 50%.
Was it something she said or the market's expecting her to say?
People making the minimum wage are women, many of them women of color. Again, it secures the child tax credits, helping nearly 1 in 3 adults having trouble paying for household expenses and 12 million children from going hungry. So in the legislation, we have the child tax credit. This is quite remarkable, $3,000 for a child, and then
Let's see here.
under it is 36.
Indy went short.
This is pulling these children out of poverty. The bill also addresses those who are food insecure, rent insecure, and the rest. So it's a very important piece of legislation. It is what this country needs, and I salute
See, if I had these 1-to-1, they would be making money.
for their leadership in recognizing that in this important work, but also to do so in a way that is robust, meets the needs of the American people, but also
Squire apparently didn't take one today.
the strength of our economy. We plan, as I said, to work on it this week, next week, and have it passed by the end of February, and so we can send it to the president's desk before the unemployment benefit.
I guess Indy has just been short this whole time.
This week, as you know,
And never got taken out of his position. That's funny.
such a sad time for us. But as we see what is being presented, we also see the extraordinary valor of the Capitol Police, who risked and gave their lives to save our
It's a little wasting our time at this.
democracy, our lives. They were martyrs for our democracy. Martyrs for our democracy, those who lost. That is why I am putting forward.
President is meeting with Democrats and Republicans on how to move forward on job-creating infrastructure legislation. Well, that's good. I wonder why Trump never did that.
Protected the Capitol by giving them a Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor that Congress can bestow. The service of the Capitol Police Force that day brings honor to our democracy. Their exception.
Don't poke the bear, Ace.
We must always remember their sacrifice and stay vigilant against what I've said before.
Wait, pick and choose our battles, yeah?
Artillery of time. We will never forget.
A divorce can derail your finances, says CNBC, retweeted by Newsquack. Yes, it can.
Sicknick.
Rule number 1, always go all in with your partner's account on IPOs.
To share their grief.
Okay, listen, if that's all she's talking about, I don't want to listen to her anymore. Well, let's come and look at a couple of things. I'm not particularly enthused by that particular spot, but 3888. Hmm. Pelosi wants stimulus passed by end of the month. I would have thought it'd be earlier than that. Well, I still don't see any driver for that move. It looks like I've managed the risk okay today. I should have taken some profits on some of these, but I guess my calls haven't been awful. This doesn't move the needle on a legal basis. The idea that Republican senators at some significant group saw that video yesterday and jumped into the acquittal camp just doesn't carry any water. What's he saying here exactly? For everyone that I've spoken to on the Republican side, that's a good portion of the senators were disturbed by the video they saw. What you do hear from Graham and other conservative senators is what you saw was mostly emotional, and it didn't move the legal elements of the case. There's no universe in which Lindsey Graham was going to vote for conviction of Donald Trump, or where Ted Cruz or Holly or who others made this argument. This doesn't move the needle on a legal basis. The idea that Republican senators at some significant group saw the video yesterday and jumped in the acquittal camp just doesn't carry any water. Yeah, probably not, because the legal argument is that it's free speech. They were starting to get a little bit of good upside movement going there, and they kind of petered out a little bit at 09. A choppy day, so yeah, it really is. But it's not just that it's choppy; it's that the it's not running. Yeah, the robots probably would have done okay if not for taking. So here it took 2 trades, a long and a short. And when you come down here and you look at the bottom, okay, so this one right here wasn't very good. Only got 150 MA. But here, this one, see, the favorable excursion was more than the adverse excursion on this one. So this short trade that it took, he could have made money on it. But he's looking for 2-to-1 reward factor. So he has to get 400 to make money, essentially. And so he didn't do it. So if it was equal risk reward, then that one would have been a winner. And this one maybe would have almost been a winner. Your free speech is limited in certain circumstances. That's correct, Ace. And there is a long history of legal cases wherein there are requirements and there's like specific legal tests at which you can determine if your free speech has crossed the line into incitement. And what Donald Trump did in that speech does not meet any of those legal tests. If this was a civil case, it would be thrown out of court. Straight up, if it was a civil case, it would be thrown out of court. Especially since he said, okay, now go in peace. There was another thing that I saw the other day that I thought was kind of weird. Was there was a video circulating around. The New York Times had cell phone data leaked to them, which is a little scary. So some employee at Google pulled all of this cell phone data and just released it to the public. And it showed how people were over at his speech, and then after his speech, they went over to the Capitol. And I was like, well, yeah, because in the speech, he told them now go over to the Capitol peacefully. And, you know, basically wanted them to go around the Capitol and protest. And they had already broken into the Capitol building by that point, unbeknownst to them. And I was like, okay, so like this is in line. It doesn't mean anything. But just because I hate his guts, I want to throw any chalice. The whole thing is just so silly. So this is what this is really about. Like, just think about it from a, like, if this was a legal precedent point of view. Democrats are concerned about the way that people perceive things. So from the Democrats' point of view, if Donald Trump says that there was election fraud, and that causes people to do things that are bad because he said that there was election fraud, Donald Trump is responsible for that because it was what he said and the things that people got from him that made it happen. Right? Essentially, they're letting the perception of things and what people say turn into other people's actions when the legal requirement is people are responsible for their own actions, and the only time that your free speech crosses into illegal territory is when you give people specific directions to do something illegal. Right? If they go off and they make their own decision on doing something, that's okay. But if you explicitly tell them to do something and then it's illegal, right? And this is kind of the way that a lot of Democrats think, and so they believe that it is the case. But if you look at the actual like legalness of it, it would get thrown out of court, right? So if Donald Trump were to get impeached successfully because of it, that would be the legal precedent that they'd be setting, is that anytime the president says something, if somebody goes out and let's say that you're President Obama and you say mean things about Republicans, and then that causes somebody to go out and try and kill Republicans when they're at a baseball game or something like that. And then would Obama be responsible for that guy going out? That's like the kind of precedent that they're setting, right? That they want to set, but it's not going to happen. But I only bring that up again because here, one of those key things that I gave you about how, what are some of the key drivers behind the messaging that Republicans and Democrats use. Here again, you can see how it applies. Democrats almost always end up thinking first and foremost, and too much, in my opinion, about what people think about what you said. Perception. I think it's because, they are very persuaded by that sort of stuff, and so they think it matters. The churches that campaigned for him while receiving tax, well, that gets into very fuzzy territory, Keller. They do think, though, that the government will take away religious legal protections, and on a number of issues on which they care about, they will. Right? Like, it's going to turn into, if you are a Republican and you don't believe in abortion, you can't work in the medical field. Like that's the way that Democrats want to take it. Republicans allow you to have like religious objections, and then there just has to be somebody there else at the store to do it. That sort of thing. Or the whole what was that court case with the Catholic nuns and stuff being forced to have a healthcare plan that covered abortion. Like, they care about those things. Or frankly, all of these court cases over the coronavirus where people wanted to worship in person and the state locked it down. Nobody needs abortion healthcare more than, well, yeah, like this. But that was the whole point, is that they didn't want to have to pay for it on their healthcare plan. You know, that was the thing about the Obama healthcare plan. I know that everybody focuses on what is it, a tax or not, and all of this stuff. The thing that bothered me about it was not only that you had to have insurance, but that they required you to have certain coverage in your insurance too. And that you had to have a plan that covered a bunch of stuff that I have no interest in ever paying for. So you see what happened. This is where, this is another thing. When I'm looking at political stuff, this is one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, why do they want that thing? Right? And in a large, almost any social issue, it comes down to they want something to happen, but because there's enough people out there that don't believe in that thing, they have to force everybody to go along with it in order to make that thing happen. And it's the case here with healthcare, is that they want all healthcare plans to have a certain level of coverage. If there's a certain group of people, say 50% of the country, that don't want that thing covered in their plan, then it makes it hard for them, you know, for all plans to have it, right? So they have to force you to have it. Who cares? The U.S. is the only Western man. This is the one that I think is the funniest. Blunt. Listen very carefully. That's the whole point! That's why the United States exists, guys, is because we're the one country that don't do those things. If you want to be like every other country, live in every other country. The U.S. was founded on that we don't do that. That we just let people do whatever they want. And it's not because Americans are, it's not because Americans are so smart or anything. It's because they want to have a place where they can live and do what they want, even if it's stupid. That's why I've accepted a little bit of liberal authoritarianism as long as it's based on science, because science transcends the argument. Well, but that's the whole point, is that, like, I don't think that, yeah, there are things that are like truth and not truth, and that are going to be better for the country or not better for the country. But there's also just letting people do what they want to do. And I think that you should just let people do what they want to do. If somebody wants to believe that Donald Trump was robbed in the election, then let them believe that. I think that that should have been investigated more into. I think that I should be allowed to say that, and, you know, believe that it would have been nice for them to have done a better investigation of it. Like, why can't people just do what they want to do? And then it always comes down into here that, false beliefs cause harm. People cause harm. Anything that people do things all the time that cause harm, it doesn't mean that it's illegal. You can't control every little tiny thing that people do. You just can't. You're gonna cause more problems than you solve by trying to do that. Piss drop being, this is the thing, is where people, I think that it's the people on the other side that are the fascists. They're the ones that are trying to create this ideological, one way of thinking where if you get away from the common train of thought, even in the slightest, it's like you have to be canceled and this is a big bad problem all the time. That's bad for us in the long run, because even though you get individuals that believe things that are wrong and maybe make choices that are not the optimal choice, there's also a lot, and I mean a lot of situations where the majority is wrong, like dead wrong, really awfully bad wrong. And when the majority ends up being dead wrong on things, that's when the really bad stuff happens. So you have to give people the freedom to believe and think and do what they want. And if there's something that they think that's harmful to other people, to the extent, then you make it illegal. But there are, of course, like limitations on that, right? Like probably what is the word? Threshold argument there is like, should people be required to get a vaccination? I don't think that that's legal. Why is it that you can, abortion can be legal, but you can't refuse to get a vaccination? So it's your body only when it's what you want to do. But if it's something that you don't want to do, then it's not your body. Yes, we can. We live in a society, we have to get along, and we can let people's false belief run rampant and cause harm. Yes, we can. Again, that's why America exists! Because people wanted to believe their own things and go and do stuff that the state claimed caused harm. And so they came over to America so that they could do it. And they said, we're going to have a place where people can just do what they want. If you want to live in a nanny state where they tell everybody what they have to believe and what they, then go and live in Germany. So if I have a false belief that I need to shoot everyone, shooting people is illegal. Okay? Believing things is not illegal. See, you're using a what do we call it? This is a scarecrow, Ace. What the argument that you just used there is the logical fallacy of a scarecrow. You went and you created a ridiculous situation that is not the one that is at question here. The one that is at question here is, should I be allowed to believe that abortion is wrong and not have a health care plan that has abortion in it? And there are some people in this country that basically believe that having a health care plan that doesn't cover abortion should be illegal. And that is like literally the issue at point here. That like people have literally gone to court and battled over, and the nuns won. Right? Should you be allowed to deploy robots that don't trade well? I guess you should. It's your money. Yes, you should. I haven't deployed that robot yet. It's still in testing. And I don't think that they trade so poorly, Blunt. And I think that the next time that you say shit like that, you have to post a broker statement or get the fuck out of my channel, because I'm tired of you talking like you know everything when you haven't proven jack shit. You come in and you say like, you come in and you bash me, but then you don't show any evidence. You know what, Blunt? You can go and start a stream. You can go and show everybody your trades live, and we can go and we can track your performance. We can look at your statements. We can look at all of the trades that you did every day like this, and then we'll see how well you do. Otherwise, though, I think you should just shut the fuck up, because I'm getting tired of you too. I just know I support people's right to bodily autonomy. So then, do you believe that you should be able to refuse getting vaccinated? Well, I'm not the state. I can do whatever I makes me happy here in this channel. That's the great thing about it. You should let him believe what he wants to believe. No, here's the thing. When it comes to trading, if I can get on the trading thing again, and I feel like I make this pretty clear, but maybe I don't enunciate it very specifically. If you make specific performance claims, you have to back it up. If you make specific performance claims as proof in an argument by saying, well, I do well, so it must work, you have to prove it. If you make performance claims in an argument of whether you're better or worse than another trader, you have to prove it. So you can come in and you can say, oh, you do so terrible, but you have not proven that you even trade. For all I know, you're some fucking 14-year-old kid that's never made a trade in his fucking life. And no more than you will ever will. Prove it. You haven't told anybody squat. Like, here's the thing. I'll go in and I'm like, okay, here's like a model of markets that has been a proven study and that I know that Wall Street firms use to make decisions. What have you given people? Nothing. How do I know that you're even like old enough to trade? You're some random guy on the internet that hasn't provided any value to anybody, but just comes in and criticizes me. And frankly, criticisms that I don't think are very fair, like, oh, your robot sucks. Well, I mean, it's doing okay, and we're still working on it. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, yeah. And no time have I ever told, yeah. In fact, I'm pretty clear explicitly that I don't want you to take the positions that I do. Because if I have something that's good, I want to keep it for myself. And if it's not a good trade, then you follow me and I don't want you to take the bad trade. So you need to learn from opposition. If here's, and that's the thing that makes me frustrated about it, is that if Blunt said, here's the setup, and then we'd go and we'd back test it. Here's the principle, and we'd go and we'd test it. Well, I don't necessarily have evidence of this particular thing, but I believe this and I use it in my trading. And then we would go and we would try and find evidence. But that's not what he does. He just talks shit. This is like the one place online where I've pretty much ever had a good conversation about politics. Well, I mean, I can get carried away, sure. And there's certainly people that probably have watched the stream in the past and then stopped watching because they didn't want to hear the politics stuff. But I think that the place where we kind of do a little better is that our discussion of politics is for a reason, right? We need to understand things about the way that the world works because it can potentially assist in our trading. So I'm gonna give you another chance, but if I hear shit talking without specific evidence to back it up or actually contributing something, you're gone. Yeah, real traders are humbled by markets, and that will make you humble when you get profitable. If someone boasts about their great trading, then they aren't really trading. When you came in here the first day, that was what we talked about, wasn't it? Forever Real California. And yeah, I totally believe it. You notice that some of the best, most reputable people in our industry don't make specific performance claims. And it's because they know that sometimes they're going to trade awful. And if you're only as good as your last trade, then nobody's ever going to listen to you, right? So they avoid talking about that. I highly doubt that some of those guys that And I mean, some of them, I've spoken to them, they really do know their stuff, but they probably wouldn't be willing to put themselves out there like I do, because because they actually know something and they know how that it's a bad idea for their trading. Whereas for me, I'm using the stream to help develop that, and we have this book that I've been pulling all of these models out of this book. We've learned a lot from that book. I would not have known about that book if it wasn't for this stream, because it was a viewer that recommended the book to me. And that's why I do the stream. And even if I'm trading at sim, it's beneficial to me because I learn more. So we have been up here in the E-mini, but it's really gradual. The delta seems kind of off. I'm okay with, like, I kind of resigned myself that I wasn't going to be taking any more trades. So would it have been at 09? I could have made $10, but by the way, Treasury is kind of down all towards their lows, which is interesting. And most of the other commodities didn't really move. Dollar recovered, so that's something. But oil and silver stuff weren't really impacted by it. But treasuries are down, and here the E-mini kind of a sideways thing. So I don't know. And GameStop below the open, but not puking yet. I'm pretty sure that is coming though. Learning to lose is more important than celebrating your wins, and not every trading methodology can be taught, especially when you're trading fast based on. Well, and I think that a lot of people, one of the things that I've found is that a lot of the people that are really truly good with their trading don't really understand why they trade it the way that they do. They might even think that they can go and explain it, but then when they actually really do try and go through it to somebody, they realize how much about their process isn't well defined. Since Monday, the ES has no clear path. It's a horrible trade this week. I mean, I can kind of see that, but when you come back and you look at the chart, what is that like? Okay, well, we've kind of been sideways for the past 3 days. Monday was good, and there's a good trend off of that. This looks to me like volatility has just decreased substantially, which means that probably we're still on the uptrend, but we're going to have to bring our targets in. I'm really happy that I've been trading the 8 tickers and I've been doing okay with them. I wish that today my win rate was better, and I wish that yesterday I hadn't have traded so awful, but I mean, I should have turned around on the trend on that day, and I could have made a ton of money yesterday. So that was a big mistake, and I'm not quite sure why I was doing that, but okay, I've got to go, guys. Thanks for talking. Thanks for chiming in there for real. I thought that you had a really good comment there for the end to end it. And what should we put in the oh man, today, this whole week, it's like, what do I put in the titles? What do I put in the titles? I don't know. Volatility continues to contract. I was going to say, you have a better idea, you put it in the comments in the video later, we change it. But you guys never do, which must mean that my things are good. At least, anyways, stay profitable, friends.